Hello, my name is Sidney Pertnoy and I am chair of the board of the Holocaust Memorial in Miami Beach. It gives me great pleasure to be able to say a few words on behalf of the organization who sponsored Names Not Numbers in your school. We are currently living through extraordinary times and have had to adjust to our new reality. Under these conditions, working from your homes, you were able to complete this project, and for that we are grateful to all of the students for your dedication. Thank you to the teachers and schools for ensuring that your students could benefit from the Names Not Numbers program. This year, schools from Miami, Broward County, Palm Beach County, and Orlando all participated, creating documentaries that will be a part of the historical record. You should all be very proud. Most importantly, I want to thank our Holocaust survivors who participated. They are true heroes, and we are forever indebted to these brave individuals who volunteer their time and give of their heart. To all the students who participated in this project, I sincerely hope that you take with you memories that will last a lifetime. Thank you to Sharon Horowitz, Executive Director of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach, and Daniel Reed, Education Coordinator, for sponsoring the Names Not Numbers program for the second year. Recognize the importance of this program, the Florida Department of Education generously funded our efforts. Our deepest appreciation to Tova Rosenberg, the director and founder of Names Not Numbers, for creating this program, and to the filmmakers and editors who helped create these films. As time marches on and our precious survivors continue to age, it is up to the next generation to stand up against all forms of racism and bigotry. The films you helped create are a testament to the importance of teaching about the Holocaust and triumphing over hatred. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Frank Sanchez and I teach a Holocaust Studies class at Miami Coral Park Senior High. It has been an honor to work with Tova Rosenberg and the Names Not Numbers project these last 2 years. This is quickly becoming one of my students' favorite activities to participate in. They get hands-on experience with professional recording equipment. They learn interview techniques with local journalists. But most importantly, they get to meet and record the stories of Holocaust survivors, ensuring that their stories are told for years to come. I'm extremely proud of this year's film. My students worked very hard at putting a movie together that expresses the journey that these survivors went through, while at the same time showing the hope that they have for the future.
Hi, my name is Annabelle Tenorio, and I would like to share with you today my experience with the involvement of the Holocaust Names Not Numbered project. I was part of this project with my teacher, Mr. Frank Sanchez. It was such an amazing experience that not everyone gets to encounter firsthand. My survivor's name was Mr. Jack Waksal. This man's story brought nothing but tears to the entire room. However, his personality just brought smiles. His details were so vivid, and it made me wonder how someone can possibly deny his story and the entire Holocaust itself. Therefore, this project is so important to keep their stories alive and to prevent these events from happening again. Although this project did not get the proper screening it deserved, it is still a memory I would cherish for years to come. As Mr. Jack Waksal said, we need to be kind to the world and we need to be nice to each other. So today, after hearing his story, George Gabor's story, David Mermelstein's story, and Allan Hall's story, please take their messages and implement them in our world today. Thank you for allowing me the time to share my unique experience with you all today.
Hi, I'm Gabor. I'm today going to talk about the Names Not Numbers project. So, as you know, I did a Holocaust documentary with my Holocaust class, in which we interviewed Holocaust survivors and we learned about their stories. And to me, it was a life-changing experience, not only because I got to talk to Holocaust survivors, but because it changed the way I perceived the Holocaust. Because it's different when you talk about 6 million people that died in a genocide than you talk about David, a man who lived and had a family and lost his whole family during the Holocaust. And it was really intense the day of the interview. The stories were really raw and they were really sad, but it was actually a really educational and enriching experience for me and for my classmates. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think people should appreciate the Holocaust more than they do, because it could happen again. Anti-Semitism, sadly, is increasing over time. It's been a trend to hate Semit people in the recent years. And we, as a generation, have the job to prevent that from happening again. And I think that's a value that Holocaust survivors really went into during their interview. Respect and love for everybody, regardless of race, religion, or every other aspect. We gotta love people, and we gotta make awareness around the Holocaust or around any other topics to spread love and not hate. Thank you.
Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work, their filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
You know, it gives you perspective on just how grim the situation was, you know, during the Holocaust.
You just live from day to day, not knowing what tomorrow brings.
I've witnessed killings. I've witnessed so much, but the most thing what I witnessed is how they killed little kids. It was unbelievable to see it.
I tried putting myself in that position and thinking, okay, what would I do if I wasn't able to talk to my parents ever again? Like, what would I tell them?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And today we're going to be starting our project with Names Not Numbers. Through the Names Not Numbers project, you will have the privilege of meeting and interviewing Holocaust survivors. Some of them actually were there in different concentration camps. Others had different experiences through the Holocaust.
I think it's important because as time goes by, there won't be any survivors left. So it's important that we get as many survivors as we can to share their story.
You will be learning interview techniques. You'll be learning filming techniques. You will be getting their background information. You'll develop questions. You'll tell their story of life before the Holocaust, their experiences during the Holocaust, and then their life after the Holocaust.
So their business was taken away and they were sent over to another town.
I heard about the Holocaust in, I think, about second grade. I wanted to know firsthand experience. My friends, they told me like it was an amazing experience. It was really emotional.
These people have a story and we should say it to the world.
What I want you to take away from this is the experience of not only learning how to film or learning how to interview, is to know that you're talking to living history.
The next generation is not gonna get a chance to meet the survivors, which will never be repeated again.
Today we learn what questions we should ask the survivor. We have to listen carefully what the survivor is telling us.
Good morning, students. My name is Sergio Carmona, and I'm a reporter for the Florida Jewish Journal. It's a weekly publication of the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Now, over my career covering South Florida's Jewish community, I've had the honor, the pleasure, and the privilege to interview Holocaust survivors, local Holocaust survivors throughout the community.
He gave like a nice kind of overview of like how the interviewing process works, like how you should let the person kind of speak.
You know, it's important to get the facts, then ask the feelings. You know, you want to make sure you have the accuracy. They might be very emotional. They might start crying, so it's very important to be patient with these survivors.
It's hard to know how to ask these questions, and I'm nervous just to meet him in person and actually ask him these questions about his life.
Be prepared to ask follow-up questions or to have questions inserted. You might be curious to follow up with another question, so that's very important. They want to make sure that this doesn't happen again, that the Holocaust memory is preserved.
These are the cameras you're going to use. We're going to have 3 cameras on the shoot, different frame sizes, different shot sizes.
You put like the people not in the center but on the side. So I'm used to like seeing people like in the center on YouTube and stuff like that, but like when he said that, I usually put them on the side. If not, then it's too boring.
Okay, so this is called the rule of thirds. It's common in photography, it's in filmography, it's even in art. So that's your medium shot, but what do we talk about? It's in the middle. So let's slightly turn it over, and that would be your shot for her, medium shot.
We started like interacting with the cameras, and I found it pretty easy. Like I thought it was gonna be harder to like change volumes and all that stuff, but then when you get to do it, it's like it's not that hard.
Your job is to film the interviewer. Your job is to film the cameraman, which is you guys. And your job is to film the person doing audio, and your job is to film Sanchez every once in a while.
We sat in like a classroom type setting, and he taught us all about how to use the cameras. He showed us how to sound check, and it was very helpful. Like now I know how to kind of use a camera.
So the person I'm going to be interviewing, his name is Allan Hall.
David Mermelstein.
Jack Waksal.
George Gabor.
I'm feeling nervous and hoping that, I don't, mess anything up, and I hope I do it right.
My group, we went outside and David was there waiting for us. Each of us hugged him. We introduced ourselves, and I'm feeling really nervous to be working on this project and meeting the survivor.
When I first met him, he was so sweet, he was funny, and I feel like I was talking to one of my family members because he was polite.
He's the nicest person I've met. Like, he's really joyful, he's real nice, he's really kind, educated. Overall, it was a great experience.
What is your name?
Jack Waksal. I was born September 1924. I was born in Poland. My family I got a father, his name was Samuel Waksal. My mother was Paddy Waksal. My brother was Yechiel Waksal. My sister was Yehovet. And the youngest sister was a bruja, Waksal. I went to a Jewish tradition school too. I was playing soccer. The mostly time in Poland was the mostly games was soccer game. That's what we was playing all the time. We got a good life. The whole family was all the time together. We was doing Friday night, we was doing after Saturday morning, we was doing a dinner with the mostly family come together. It was unbelievable life for Jewish people to live a good life in Poland before the war.
I was born Adam Janusz Horowitz. During World War II, I had many names, the last one of which was Adam Janusz Horsky, came to the United States with that name. My uncle said that Adam was not an American name. I desperately wanted to be an American. Asked him what was an American name. He told me Allan. I didn't know how to spell it, but I spelled it all different ways. I did resolve them. Now it's Allan John Hall. I was born in Kraków, Poland. It's southern Poland, and it's about 80 miles north of Auschwitz. My life was very good. We would have vacations at seashore, up in the mountains. The entire family would holiday in the mountains. My grandparents had a retail store, so they didn't go up to the seashore with us. But the mountains were so close that they could come up for a weekend. And I was the prince. I was the only grandchild. I was the only child. So anything I wanted, I could get, usually a multiple of it, not just one.
My name is David Mermelstein. I was born in Czechoslovakia.
When were you born?
December 21, 1928. I had a grandfather, parents, 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers, and 1 sister. And I'm the only one that survived. My parents had a business. It was selling anything to drink, like beer, wine, whiskey, cigarettes. And there was never any problem between the Czech, the Jews, and the Catholics.
My name is George Gabor.
When were you born?
1938 in Hungary. Well, my family consisted of my sister, the 2 parents, 4 of us. During the summer, we went to the Lake Balaton, which is the biggest lake in Europe. She was a very good swimmer. We took boat rides and went to restaurants, and a fairly enjoyable, safe life before it all happened.
All the time, the Gentile was all the time not so nice to people, but we ignore it. We try to live nice to them.
Anti-Semitism was always in the background. Being Jewish, already we were marginalized. Jewish population in Hungary was something like maybe 2% at the most, you know. We are only 1% of the world population.
Just before the beginning of the war, just about the time the war started, I remember 2 incidents. One, maybe within 2 blocks of our house was a beautiful, like a strip park. It was a long park that went many blocks down, and they had rose beds at that time. War started in September. Roses were full in bloom. And so there was one particular bloom I wanted to bring to my mother. And I snipped it off, the plant. I knew I wasn't supposed to, but one plant, one flower, how much harm could that be? Well, a cop caught me, and was very rough with me. And my nanny tried to persuade him that it was really nothing. He would have none of it. He dragged me to my home, and my mother realized immediately what was going on. And rather than berating the cop for an anti-Semitic act, because he singled me out when other children were doing the same thing, she diffused the situation by thanking him for teaching me an important lesson, gave him a $20 bill or some small amount of money, and he disappeared. But we all knew it was an anti-Semitic act. The other one that was even more flagrant was there was a little girl that I played with all the time because we were the same age and the same building. And I remember for a couple of days I saw that little girl's mother looking at me kind of strangely. And then all of a sudden, and I've been in that apartment literally all the time, as she was in our apartment, all of a sudden she started yelling that I should leave that apartment, that I was a dirty Jew. And I had no idea what she was talking about. I was so surprised, I kind of stood there aghast. And she finally yelled directly at me to leave, leave. She wanted no Jews in her apartment. And so I went home, and once again my mother shielded me. But that was the last time I played with that little girl. And here was a relationship that went on from the time we were in the cribs, and all of a sudden at age 4.5, I was a dirty Jew. Well, war started September 1, 1939. Just prior to that, my dad said, we got to leave here, we have to leave here, we got to go east, because his hometown was about 200 miles, a little more than 200 miles, further east than Krakow. And he wanted to go back to his hometown, away from Germany. My mother said, no, you're crazy. The Germans won't do anything. They're good people. They're well-educated people. They're the best country in Europe. And finally, the argument was settled. My dad grabbed me by the hand and literally started dragging me out the door. And my mother startled, said, what are you doing? He says, well, I can't force you to come with us. But the boy, me, and I are going to Lvov now. And I was the only child my parents had. So shocked, crying, my mother followed us. And she only asked for one thing. She said, please, please, I want to say goodbye to my parents. He said, no, you cannot say goodbye to your parents. And my mother, crying all the way, went with us. And the first thing that breaks down in a war zone is transportation, particularly public transportation. So by the time we left, which was probably within a day or two, maybe no more than 3 or 4 days after the war started, there were no trains that we could take, no airplanes. The Germans controlled the skies. So we literally walked from Krakow to Lvov. And my mother always felt badly that she never could say goodbye to her parents or her sister. She went to her, and every day she would write a letter to her parents, to her sister, to other relatives. Not a single letter that she ever wrote was ever responded to or ever came back. My mother went to her grave not knowing what happened or why that was so. And about 10 years after she died, I found out that the Jews of Krakow were rounded up, brought to a square, and by truck taken to concentration camps.
The first what they did, when they come into Poland, they got names, but they used to be the leaders in the city, and they killed them. In the ghetto, it was trouble. You couldn't have food because they took away the Jewish stores from the people. It was not anymore that you could go and buy food. The only thing what you got food is what they cook a soup a day, and you have to stay in the line to get the food. And you couldn't go out without an armband, what they called. You have to put in the Jewish star on it, or you got a yellow star on your back. We was living in the ghetto 1 year when they liquidate the ghetto, because they liquidate in some places they didn't want to have it. Small cities should be ghettos. So some of them they took to work, some of them they put it to another ghetto, but the smaller kids, the little kids, they ask the mothers, what do you want to do? Or you want to give it up to kids? If not, they killed the parents and the kids.
Once the war began, first they took away the business, then you couldn't go to school.
How did your parents react to the Germans entering the town?
What could they do? Try to hide, and that's all. We were home, and they made an announcement. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, they're going to go from house to house to pick up. And if there is anybody going to be missing in the family, somebody in the family will be shot. We walked to the train, not far, and they filled up the wagon. And I mean filled up. They didn't count, they just pushed in so many, and they put in a bucket of water to the right and an empty bucket on the left side for a bathroom. But we estimated by 3 days the train stopped. They took the tallest young man, and a tall one took him on his shoulder, raised him up to the little window there on top to see where we are. So he read off Auschwitz. That's in Polish. In German it's Auschwitz. The doors opened. Step down as fast as you can and leave everything there. Everything will follow you. So we left all the clothes, everything that we had there, because we couldn't take anything. And lined up men and boys to the right, and women and children to the left. Then we started to walk. On top there was a stand, and a Dr. Mengele was there. He had on big gloves. He looked at you, just motioned either to the left or to the right. So when my line came, we were a large family. He motions to our left, his right. For my grandfather, parents, two boys, and one sister went to the left. And my two brothers were hollering, "Come on, we have to go." He was showing them to go to the right, but I didn't see it. I stopped looking. And then when they says, "Come on," they going. I had to decide if I go with my parents or with the brothers. But I looked and I saw one SS guy. They were tough. They had rubber hoses with wires in it, and they would hit you with that. So he saw that I stopped. So he came and I saw him coming. So I went where my two brothers were. We were the last 500,000 Jews that were shipped from Europe. So they didn't have time to tattoo our numbers. So they just gave us a number on the shirt. I woke up one morning with a temperature. So if you're sick, you're supposed to step out and they will take you to a hospital. They said that way. We didn't call it a hospital because we saw anybody that went nobody ever came back. My oldest brother, when we were together in Auschwitz, and some people ran to touch the wire, the fence. So he took the two of us and he made us promise that we would never do anything like that. That no matter what, never give up and just keep trying. And I did.
Hungary was the last country to be occupied by the German army. And even my father thought that was going to be is going to be saved, so he didn't make any plans to emigrate or move. The day was exactly March 19, 1944. I believe it's a Sunday. It was a beautiful day, and the Germans came in white horses, dress uniform, without firing one shot. They just simply walked in. People were lining up the street. It was a big thing. My parents reacted with absolute fear and preoccupation for our safety, well-being, and even freedom. Because after the Germans took over Hungary, nothing was the same. I mean, we had to wear a yellow star from early on. The deportation started en masse. Hundreds and hundreds of people were just simply put in the wagons and never seen before, never seen after. Okay, so things changed dramatically.
So we stay put. The Germans overrun us, they take control. And one day we get a little 3x5 card, a small piece of paper, saying you have to leave your apartment, leave everything in the apartment there, and you have to go to some other address. Well, we assume, normal assumption is that some Nazi officer wanted our apartment. So we took the permitted one bag, we're permitted to pack one suitcase with us, and we went to the new address. And we were absolutely shocked, because imagine if somebody said to you, now you have to move from wherever you're living and have to go somewhere else. And then this other apartment, somebody else is already living there. So there was some unpleasantness, but we wound up in a small bedroom, and they kept the large bedroom for themselves. And we were trying pretty much to stay out of their way. Well, shock of shocks, a few days later, a third family showed up. We were all Jewish. And so they were aggregated in the Jews. There were no barbed wire fences, there were no walls or anything. My dad was warned that there was going to be a roundup of children. And so in Russia it's called pogrom, in German call it action. It's a roundup. And so my dad found a safe house. A farmer was willing to take me in for safekeeping. And we were going down to a railroad station to go to the safe house. And my dad hired a railroad guy to take me there. And all of a sudden, the end of the street was blocked off. We tried to turn the other way. The other end of the street was blocked off. These are narrow medieval streets. And because I was on the street, I was literally the first child taken in this child roundup. And we were taken to a place and put into corral. I knew I was in a whole lot of difficulty and in a very dangerous way when I was in Nazi control. I was so happy when I saw my dad walk through the front door of that place, which, by the way, now I believe was a concentration camp. And I thought, yo, I'm gonna be saved. Well, I saw him, he saw me, our eyes locked on each other. And then he looked away and he went to see who the German that was in charge. They spoke briefly. My shock was, I expected my dad to take me. My shock was when he didn't even look at me and he left. And I thought, my gosh, my own dad is abandoning me to the Germans and I'm gonna die. And several hours later, my dad came back Well, this time I was no longer overjoyed when I saw my dad. If he abandoned me once, he can abandon me again. He spoke to the Nazi again, and I saw the Nazi walk away. And my dad looked straight at me as I'm looking at you right now, and he went just like that. And I knew where the door was. I joined my dad and walked out. I have since learned, just about a month and a half ago, I was interviewed by the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And to the best of the knowledge of the interviewer, I am the only survivor of these child roundups. All of the other children were murdered.
My whole family was fortunately, they went into work because they was young, and they took into work. It was a war already starting going on between the Germans and the Russians. And we provide them with work in our campus, about 1,500 people, pretty close to it, that we start working for them every day. We went out, we built barracks, we built anything what they wanted to do it, so we helped them to do it. They took probably 55 people, it was cold already, and they started walking with us. They told us to walk single-wise. We walked towards where they put a grave pretty close to the forest. That was a forest over there. They told us to kneel down. When we kneel down, I said to the other guy in the front, I said, if they're gonna start shooting, in the left side was a German. He's the ranking officer, a big guy or something. And the guys was around with the guns, was SS. And they said, can we shoot? And the guy said, no. Before I take out my pistol, I'm gonna show you how to do it. When he started with his pistol, we got up, the first guy and I, and we grabbed the officer, we fell in, and he started to say in German to them not to shoot. If they would shoot, they would kill him too. I jumped over on the other side, I ran, and it was already dark. I ran, I went into a Gentile, what I used to know. He took me away, he heard that was shooting. He took me away to his cousin to put it close to the forest. And I was over there pretty close to a month time in the forest by myself. And I find out they killed from the 1,500 people, but they liquidate in Koshini, they liquidate pretty close to 600 people they killed the next day when I ran away from this place. And my father was killed the next day, and my mother was taken away to another ghetto, or to Blanco, or to Auschwitz. My two sisters didn't want to go away from the mother. They went with the mother. I never sold this. From this time on, my father, my mother, I never sold it.
How long were you there for?
In Auschwitz, not too long. 2 months. Then they sent us to this camp. We walked halfway. Then we took a train. It's already winter, cold, no top on the train. So we got to the other camp. Living conditions, well, the beds were bunk beds, 4 person in a bed. It was only boards, nothing else, and a piece of a blanket. First we were clearing up the ground and get it ready for railroad tracks. So then we got from the truck to carry the tracks to the place and do it, keep on going. So they came back, and one guy said, I found a cousin, the other guy found a friend, So I went to the German soldier with a cane, and I told them that yesterday people went and they found family. I was separated from my brother, and I would like to go see if I could find him there. So he took me. So I'm on the side watching. The first man comes, but the way they carried the sacks, so it covered the face. Till they dropped it, then I saw the face. The fifth one dropped the bag and stood up, and I saw my brother. So I screamed, and he looked. He didn't know what happened. And I went up, stepped up on the wagon. Then he saw me, hugged me, and we talked for a few minutes. And then the soldier came, we have to go. So I went back, said goodbye, and never saw him again.
My father was drafted into the Hungarian army, but not as a soldier, as a slave laborer. They were doing digging ditches or carrying food or something that has. He never had a gun, so it was just a question of being attached to them, but no rights or not any particular recognition of their services. The Germans started retreating by late 1944. All the Hungarian and other minorities, they were simply executed. My sister went to a factory where they were doing uniforms for the military, and later on, towards the end of the year, we were ordered to a ghetto. I was with my mom in a ghetto for, I think, around September or so. Living conditions in the ghetto were very difficult. Food was very low. The winter was coming.
How did you find out about your mom's death?
Well, first of all, she didn't come back by curfew time. Yeah, as I said, it was a couple of hours, and of course she could have been hiding too, but that's very unlikely, someplace. But then I was told somebody who has actually witnessed the tragedy that she was taken to the police station and shot or something like that. Like many other people, couldn't possibly believe that one day we're talking about planning our vacation in Italy or Austria or any other place, and then one day, practically one day, one day to another, her whole world collapsed. Simply, no more opera, no more music, no more news. She just simply couldn't bear it, couldn't cope with it. Yeah.
And I said to myself, I cannot survive. I give up my life, and I went back. It was about to walk maybe by 25 kilometers. I was walking to the other camps. I didn't have no choice to go back to the Germans. So I went in, the name it was Sola. It was an Air Force camp. I said, I come from a ghetto. I don't want to stay in a ghetto. So they let me be over there, and I started working over there till over 1942, every day. I used to know a little bit in electric work. So I was working a little bit in electric work and some other work. Anything they told you to do it, you have to do it. It doesn't make no difference. You was lucky that you could work and you was feeling good. They liquidated us and we went to ammunition plant in Pionki that was doing ammunition for the Germans, but what they needed. My reason what kept me going, I wanted to survive. That's the only thing. I did not have anything in my mind what I would do or this. I didn't care anymore because I know my father and mother and my sister was killed.
But then my dad got very, very lucky. And so he was socializing with some Nazi who was moaning and groaning and complaining that he had this two-room suite of offices in a Nazi headquarters building, which happened to be the tallest building in Poland, the second tallest building in Europe. It was before the war. And his company went out of business and he was just paying rent for nothing. Very nonchalantly, my dad said, "Oh, I'll sublet it from you. I have this little company." Well, he had no company. So for the next 2 years, the sole purpose of that two-room suite of offices is my mother and I, day and night, would hide in a supply closet in his office. And it was a Nazi headquarters building where they're not going to look for Jews in their own headquarters building. In 2 years' time, nobody once opened the closet door. There's no lock on it, just a pass-through lock. The only time that somebody opened it is when it got flushed out. And during the Warsaw Uprising, not the Ghetto Uprising, but the general Warsaw Uprising, the airway warden, who was supposed to get everybody out of the building, opened every door, every cabinet door, found us in a closet. We couldn't dissuade them. We said we wanted to stay in the closet. He said, everybody's got to go down to the bomb shelter. We couldn't argue with him, so we went down bomb shelter. We were in there for more than a day, day and a half. Something really terrible happened. Because for 2 years, I was within 3 feet of my mother. And all of a sudden, they insisted my mother, whoever was there insisted my mother be like 20, 30 feet away from me. And to make bad worse, in the space between us, there hung a sheet. And my mother, in order to reassure me, would say, from the other side of the sheet, "I'm okay, you'll be fine, don't worry, don't be scared," etc. And hearing my mother's voice was somewhat reassuring, but I was still frightened. I just, like always, I sat there with my head down, looking at the floor. And then, several hours later, I heard a sound that was totally unfamiliar to me. I heard what it sounded to me like a screech of a cat. And I had no idea what that was, but shock of all shocks. My brother came. That was his birth sound. My mother had no milk to give him. There are no other women breastfeeding. But nurses and doctors and midwives came to look at this teeny little 2-pound baby, less than 2 pounds. And for me, this was tragic because we had lived for the previous 4 years by people not noticing us. Now, everybody notices a newborn child, so all of a sudden we're now being visible. And I thought his birth was my death. In fact, I was exactly wrong because the Nazis regained control of Warsaw and said that everybody has to leave Warsaw through checkpoints. We did not have ID papers, and so consequently, we could not go through checkpoints. So a physician wanting to save this little baby put us on a hospital train, and we thought we were going to Germany, but in fact we wound up back in Krakow. And we were liberated 4 months afterwards.
I was working on a little train that goes into the tunnel, and we get the train hooked up and came outside to dump it. And we stepped back about 20 feet from the front because they brought a truckload of coal. And I'm standing there about 20 feet away, and the truck dumped and 2 coals came rolling down all the way, one on each side of my foot. So I looked up. Did you send this to me? We got home, and I tell my brother, look what I got. How did you get it? I says, it came to me by itself. It just rolled on from. So I took the spoon, made a knife out of the spoon, the handle, with a hammer just hit it, started to scrape, and licked it. And after a while, he bites. I said, is it good? He said, try it, you'll see. So I didn't scrape, I just bit in and ate half of it up, put other half in the pocket. I said, if I get a chance, I'm gonna try and steal some. Then I'll work my way up to the wagon where the coals are. So I had a little thing to make stops. So I had on the end of the wagon, like this, and with the right hand I came underneath the hand. They shouldn't see. Took 2 coals, put it in this pocket, then I took 2 more and put it in this pocket. So we came to lunch, and I take one out and I throw to my brother then. And he starts to eat right away. The next day I tried to save. I was able to, not too many because they started to come from the front. And then one day I was hooking up the wagon and I showed the guy to stop. He didn't stop and my hand got smashed. So I worked like this and went to sleep. Woke up in the morning and my hand swelled up like this. I couldn't move it. So I had to step out and go to the hospital. That was the first room, second and third. The people in the third room were there the longest. And if they needed room, space, so they just threw them out at night. Out, and the crematorium was right there.
I did not work in the ghetto. I just simply did some helping some other people for food or something. I did something for something. We were just like homeless, basically, a homeless life in the ghetto with other kids whose parents also disappeared. My time was preoccupied with getting food and getting shelter because the winter, you know. So I and other kids, they were just wandering around, going into apartments, breaking into apartments maybe even, to get leftover food or supplies or clothes or whatever we could possibly find.
The war for us ended I believe it was January, February 45. And I would have been about 10, but it was literally, it was just coming out of the ashes. And every little thing was an undertaking, was an event or an effort it took for anything. We were in much better shape than most people because my dad had this government job.
When I was liberated, I didn't know it, that anybody from Poland, that somebody is going to come back. In the beginning, the war was not still the end of the war. It was still fighting. The Russians, the Americans from the other side coming. I really didn't like my life when I survived. I was dealing daily basis, and you know, I got up in the morning and I did what I need to do to survive, to eat something, but I did not want to live like this. I feel like I am a backup person, because when I was in Germany in this, I was never put a name, and the camp was just a number.
Woke up in the morning, no lights, and no soldiers outside. We didn't know what happened. So one guy in the front hollered out, "Let's go out and see." So they were able to walk. So they went out and come in. There are no soldiers, no Germans, the gates are open. So let's go out. So people from the first room, all of them went out. From the second, very few. Then they come screaming, "It's the Americans. The army is coming with the tanks. Let's go out." So I was in the bed right on the edge. So I says, "They going out. We have to find a way to get out. Otherwise we'll die here and nobody will know we're here. So how are we gonna go out?" So I'll show you how. So I was at the edge of the bed. So I just rolled over. So then they rolled out and we pulled with the fingers and pushed with the leg. We estimated it took us 2 to 3 hours to get outside. Anyway, the army came and the general called together some soldiers, and within minutes, one group brought the army cuts and one group with like a tent, a roof, and walls like on the side. I couldn't even stand, so the soldier came, picked me up, and one guy held me and put me on, they had a round, like a wheel, and a scale on there. So he put me on the chair, on the scale, and had a belt to tie me up. So he looked and he shows me 40 pounds. And I thought it was 40 kilos. So I told my friends, I weigh 40 kilos. But then it came out. And 2 months later, they started to walk us, and they took a truck and took us back to Czechoslovakia.
I was picked up by the Red Cross and taken to a hospital very early part of January. January 13, 1945, Budapest, the capital, was liberated. Well, the day of the liberation, I have no recollection because I was in a hospital. So I don't know exactly what happened in the street, in the city. But I know there was a lot of settling of scores, I know that. And some of the Germans got captured or somebody executed right on the spot if they found them, especially the one with the SS logo. The only survivor is my sister, yes. And she was in a concentration camp. Well, the first time I saw my sister after war was something like the summer of 1945, and she realized that she has to take over my parents' function, which is not easy. But she did. She did at that time because she wasn't married and she had her own difficulty in getting settled, getting back to almost normal after the war. Immediately after liberation, my sister went out to the place where we were living before the war. And guess what? Somebody else came to the door and said, "Who are you?" I said, "Well, it's our apartment." I said, "Forget it." The government told that person to stay there. That wasn't a sign. Remember, there was a tremendous shortage of living space right after the war. So the government had to assign places for the people who are still coming back and around. And we had to, my sister said, okay, you will not have a whole apartment, but you will have at least one room. And that's what happened. She got one room of the 4-room or 3-room apartment. It was pretty spacious before the war, but somebody else was living there alongside her.
So describe the trip to America.
Oh, it was 2 weeks on a boat, and they had to ration the food because we were eating, let me tell you. I arrived, I couldn't speak a word of English, so with my aunt I was able to speak Jewish, and I was still weak. I walked 2 blocks, my nose was bleeding, and I was sick. So they had an agency that took care of survivors, and for about 3 months they were trying to get me back up.
When we come to the United States, I bent down and kissed the ground. It was something that you couldn't believe it in your life, or a person could see it. To go through this in my life, and I come to the United States, and I would say, if Hitler would be alive, he would probably kill himself. He would want to see. He would never believe that some Jewish people would survive. He wanted them to be destroyed. I married a girl, she was from my town, from my city. She survived Auschwitz, and I got 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl, and I'm so proud of them. And I couldn't be, that was what I survived probably to do this. My surviving thing was that I have to tell the story, what happened. Maybe because of this, I survived.
It started with 3 nights of walking across the border. The group that sponsored me, HIAS, stands for Hebrew Immigration Society, something like this, still exists. They organized a troop to Salzburg first, Austria, and from Salzburg we were shipped to Bremenhaven, Germany, in a locked train and everything, just only the refugees, and were shipped on a former troop carrier to the United States. By that time, it was 1957, something like the end of January, and I stayed in Camp Kilmer until my aunt in New York.
Came to the United States, and for the first time, I had to face the reality of school. Now, imagine this for a moment. A kid comes in, almost 12 years old, can't read, can't write, has almost no arithmetic to speak of, and on top of all that, has no English. Even today, I still read pretty much on the 5th grade level, but I have an undergraduate engineering degree and I have a doctorate in law. And so I always, when I speak to young people, I always say, it's not how smart you are, it's how much you want it. Are you willing to spend the time? My brother, who's a brilliant reader, always went through school from 1st grade on, he can read the same material in probably 1/5 the time it takes me. But when I went to law school and engineering school, if it took me 1 hour, Took me 20 hours, it made no difference. I would do it, and I would get the grades.
Advice for the next generation, they should be kind to the one. We should tell them we need to be nice to each other. It's nice to be religious. You have to have your own religion, whatever you want it, but don't interfere with some other religion. And the most important thing is that we should stay out watching what's going on in the world and be against it, what they are doing. It's no reason to be anti-Semitic things.
Never say no and never forget. You hear something, you have to say something. If it's against the Jews, speak up. Survivors, we are talking. That I got a home with a family, children, grandchildren.
Start having this or similar discussions about, I think about 3 years already. This is maybe the 5th or 6th, time that, By the way, I enjoyed this format, I must say, one-on-one, because some of them up to now was when I simply read my resume and have some questions.
Strongest message is this. It happened to us. We didn't deserve it, but it happened to us. Be careful. It can happen today to you.
I really consider that this was an unique opportunity to actually talk with a survivor because it's a once-in-life opportunity.
I think it was very emotional, mainly hearing him talk about his family because he seemed like the type of person that was very connected to his family. So it was very emotional to hear him talk about everything that happened and how he was the only one left and he had to kind of go through it alone.
You can't take life for granted, This guy I met, his parents were taken away and he was living life on his own. I've never known anybody that's been through so much pain and grief.
When I heard about it the first time, I didn't believe it. But then when I searched it and I learned more about it, I did know that it happened. So it's important to remember.
My message would be to not forget. Same thing David told us, don't forget what happened. Don't be silent about what happened, talk about it so that it stays in people's minds and people don't forget about it.
I'll never forget meeting Jack, and it was an amazing experience, and hopefully a few years later, I can tell my kids that I met a Holocaust survivor.